You everyone for joining us today. We have a really exciting presentation. We're here together with New York City Accelerator and Standard Carbon. Just a preamble, this presentation will be recorded and a copy of the deck, the slide deck, and the recording will be sent out afterwards in case you have missed something. We'll also have contact information for our presenters at the end, so you can screen capture that and reach out to any of us with any follow-up questions. During the presentation, if you can please try to keep your microphone muted and we can limit the background noise. We will have time for a Q&A at the end, and you can gladly unmute and come up to ask your questions then. So for our agenda today, we're going to do some brief introductions. Then we'll get right into electric clean steam with Standard Carbon. We'll talk with New York City Accelerator about Local Law 97 deadlines and incentives, steam retrofits, and we'll do some case studies and then have a Q&A session at the end. So first, a little bit about us, BES. My name is Ari. We're also joined together with our senior project manager, Eli. He'll be monitoring the chat for our Q&As. Building Efficiency Services has been in business now for close to 20 years. We focus on high-rise multifamily and commercial buildings. Our specialty is steam system retrofits. We also have electrification solutions that we're helping buildings transition over to. All local law compliance, including, of course, Local Law 97, 88, 84, et cetera. We've upgraded over 300 New York City buildings and serviced over 70,000 radiators. We've so far saved New York City over 3 million therms. Joining us today is Standard Carbon. They have a really innovative solution for buildings that are looking to electrify and bring themselves down under the carbon cap limits. We personally had, BES did, we had a tour of the laboratory last week, really, really phenomenal stuff, and we'll have a very interesting presentation from them. Also with us from New York City Accelerator is Christina Curry. She is phenomenal account manager, really a great resource. If anybody is trying to navigate the Local Law 97 landscape and has questions, she's really a fantastic resource to reach out to. So we're going to jump right now into electric clean steam, and I'm going to call on the Standard Carbon guys to take it away.
Thanks, Ari. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, and thank you, Ari, and to the entire BES team for having us on. I'm Jared Sussman with Standard Carbon. Today, I have the honor of introducing you all to our Carbon Bridge technology, which enables buildings to not only get in compliance with New York City's Local Law 97, but also reduces energy costs and eliminates emissions in perpetuity. All is done with zero tenant disruption. Let's get started. Here we've got a simple diagram of how our technology fits within your existing systems. Step one is that we attach to the flue of your existing boiler and any other combustion appliance, such as rooftop units, furnaces, ovens, anything that burns fuel. We take 100% of the emissions and store them as a liquid, and at that point, you're immediately decarbonized. Those emissions are then processed into renewable natural gas through our patented Carbon Bridge system and fed right back into your boiler, providing you with steam and enabling you to retain all of your existing radiators. Or it can be piped back into the grid. An easy way to think about that is that it's similar to how houses with solar can sell electricity back to the power company on a sunny day. You can see this is a totally closed loop system with our only input really being grid electricity. This allows you to use your existing steam system and comply with Local Law 97 with no tenant disruption. Next slide, please, Ari. I know you're all familiar with Local Law 97 at some level. The end goal is for New York City to become decarbonized, meaning fully carbon neutral by 2050. This is really not that far in the future, considering the amount of work that needs to be done to get there. Our take on this challenge is, how do we get this done with minimal tenant disruption? So what can we do about this enormous challenge in front of us? Next slide, please. I'm going to introduce our founder, Natan, to answer that question.
Hi, thank you. My name is Nathan. I am a New York licensed professional engineer. I've been working in the energy efficiency space now for more than 15 years, providing 87 compliance, NYSERDA rebates, now 97 compliance, a whole host of work for the real estate sector in New York City in particular. I started Standard Carbon in 2019 when the law was first passed, Local 197, because a lot of my clients came to me and they said, what do we do about 97? And I said to them at the time, well, if they really do go through with this law, you should sell your buildings. That's what you should do, because it's going to be so difficult potentially to retrofit and electrify your boiler plants and everything else that you might want to just exit the market entirely. Obviously that was not an acceptable answer to my clients, and so I spent a lot of time thinking about a solution, and what you have is the transformer that you see in the picture here, which takes the CO2 from your chimney of your boiler or any other combustion appliance, whether it's a rooftop unit or furnace, anything that's burning fuel. It takes the CO2 and turns it back into natural gas using renewable electricity. And we've designed it in a modular fashion that can be stripped down and condensed and installed even in the tightest places in a New York City building. So we're very excited about offering a minimally invasive and zero disruption solution for really the biggest challenge with 97 electrification. Next slide. Inside that box that you saw really is centered around this process flow diagram. I'm not going to jump into too much of a chemistry class today, but in a general basis, on the left side of the screen, you have your boiler. You have exhaust coming out of the flue of your boiler or rooftop unit, furnace, whatever it is. And then on the right side of your screen, you have natural gas, pipeline grade natural gas. Only this natural gas, instead of being fossil fuels, it's produced from that carbon dioxide and intermittent renewable electricity, which you see entering sort of the magic box, so to speak, from the bottom. That's in a nutshell what we do, and it offers a solution for electrification that we're very excited about. So next slide.
Let's move on and cover, thank you, Natan, by the way. Let's move on and cover some of the key benefits of the Carbon Bridge system. We already said a few times that our system causes no tenant disruption. What we really mean by this is that all the work is done in the common areas and practically doesn't even touch your existing steam system. Something I've personally heard a lot in speaking with numerous building owners is the challenge, like Natan mentioned, with not having too much space to work with in their basements or on their roofs. Like he said, we've designed this Carbon Bridge system to be flexible and enables us to fit into practically any space, as well as work with buildings of any size, small and large. The last one on here, we'll dig into this a bit more on one of the next slides, but because we use off-peak electricity to power our system, buildings can see significant energy cost savings since they no longer need to be at the mercy of peak demand charges. Next slide, please. All of this, on top of the energy cost savings, you're going to see from the off-peak electricity and the gas production, the Carbon Bridge enables you to leverage additional revenue streams via federal incentives for carbon capture and clean hydrogen production. I know some of you are probably wondering where this leaves us with the current political situation. We put a box around this and put it in bold because this is important. Even without the subsidies, the Carbon Bridge is still a net positive financially. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's quite a lot of information here on this slide, so I'll do my best to make it easy to understand. What this chart is showing is a comparison of the emissions impact from heat pumps versus the Carbon Bridge. Now, when I say emissions impact, this is actually the representative CO2 emissions further upstream at the power grid, for example. This is the first-party data from NYISO, which stands for New York Independent Systems Operator, and they're responsible for handling grid planning and electricity markets in New York. The blue graph represents heat pump systems, and the green shows the Carbon Bridge. Now, New York City's grid relies heavily on fossil fuels during peak hours, making electrification alone really an imperfect solution. Because of this, heat pumps don't always reduce emissions. Timing is really critical. The beauty of the Carbon Bridge system is that it works intermittently, operating only when cleaner power is available, reducing CO2 emissions and energy costs. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk numbers. Take a typical 50,000 square foot building in New York City. If it exceeds 97 limits, it could face $250,000 in annual fines. This is a rough estimate based on typical emissions data for older, mid to large commercial buildings in New York City. Carbon Bridge eliminates those fines, and by converting emissions into renewable energy, it also offsets the utility expenses. This makes it a highly cost-effective solution with a typical payback period of just 5 to 7 years. Now, this 5 to 7 year payback period doesn't take into account the avoided penalties. When obviously, if you factor that in, it's even more financially attractive, and we see a payback period in this case of just under 3 years. Next slide, please, Ari. On the subject of fines, I'd like to introduce our CEO, Drew, to talk about how we can help immediately.
Thanks, Jared. Hi, everyone, and thank you for your time today. I feel this is such an important slide. I wanted to present this myself. Being a member of condo boards for years, I know firsthand all the issues we all face, right? I see the rising costs, code compliance, regular maintenance, along with a host of other issues. And I, like you, feel the frustration while simultaneously realizing the importance of addressing this all. I coined this Local Law 97 derangement syndrome. And it is a reality for us all. Most of us thought that it would be repealed, or many of us did. Some type of last minute remedy would delay. Well, it hasn't happened. So, we have to face it. And I know many of these calls aren't facing penalties, but if your building is facing fines, or if you know of anyone there is a way to stop that. And that's by applying for a good faith effort extension before the deadline. You can stop the fines immediately, and we're happy to offer that solution. We partner with several firms, specializing in engineering, compliance, regulations, and installation and maintenance, such as our amazing partner, BES. Thank you guys for having us on. Building Efficiency Services, who, as Ari said, they're actually in our engineering center last week. Very happy to call them partners. I guess the bottom line is we're here to help. So reach out to your contacts at BES or to our team, and let's set some time to talk. Just want to say thank you for your time again. Thanks, but back to you, Jared.
Thank you, Drew. Next slide, please, Ari. So we know that transitioning to a new technology and ensuring compliance can be overwhelming. That's why we've designed a seamless step-by-step solution to make this as easy as possible. Step one, like Drew mentioned, is the GFE extension filing, which includes a decarbonization plan and buys you time to implement the Carbon Bridge without any immediate financial stress. Even if you don't have fines this year, let's get started. Let's put together a decarbonization plan and go from there. The next step in the execution, we'll work with our trusted green bank partners on your behalf to secure low interest financing options, ensuring that the upfront costs are manageable and still net positive to you in the long run. One in particular is NYC. That's the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation, who we've been in really close discussions with to provide those services. Because every building is different, we will develop a tailored engineering and implementation plan to seamlessly integrate the Carbon Bridge with your existing infrastructure and get you into full compliance with 97. After that, the next step is to work with Con Ed for the utility upgrades. Now, what this basically entails is just upgrading your building's electrical service connection to a time of use metering system, which allows you to take advantage of those cheap off-peak electricity rates and reduce your overall energy costs. When it comes to installation, we oversee the entire process from permitting to final commissioning. Our team ensures that everything runs smoothly and with minimal disruption to your daily operations. Next slide, please, Ari. I just want to say again, thank you for joining us today. I hope the session gave you a clear understanding of how the Carbon Bridge can help you achieve Local Law 97 compliance while unlocking significant cost savings. If you're interested in learning more or want to customize your proposal for your building, feel free to reach out to me via email or connect on LinkedIn. Alternatively, my Calendly link is also here to book an intro directly on my calendar. I believe my contact information is also at the end of the slides that Ari has. all I can say is let's work together to make your property more sustainable, profitable, and compliant with Local Law 97. I believe we've got some time set aside towards the end for Q&A, so we'd love to hear your questions then. Over to you, Ari.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. Great job. Great job,
Of course, thank
Nathan and Drew. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of synergy, I should say, between Standard Carbon and BES because, one of the big, we of course help retrofit steam systems and help them, balance them, make them energy efficient. But the prospect of electrification, a lot of times means tremendous infrastructure costs, and buildings are trying to figure out how they're going to do this. This is actually a very innovative solution where you keep your existing boiler, your existing infrastructure, and can electrify your buildings and remove, those carbon emissions. So, yeah, very, very interesting partnership we have together with Standard Carbon. We're going to move forward now and call up Christina Curry from New York City Accelerator. We work very closely with Christina. She's a phenomenal resource. Christina, please go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, sure thing. Hi, everyone. Thank you again to BES for having us here. So I'll be talking a little bit about what the Accelerator as a program can offer, and specifically Local Law 97 deadlines and extensions today. So we can go next one. So the Accelerator is a program through the New York City Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. We exist as sort of a free technical guidance resource program to help kind of walk you through local law compliance, any other building energy upgrades you'd like to make, connect you with incentives and service providers, and kind of hold your hand through the process from beginning to end. And if financing is necessary, or you have, a super that wants to get some sort of training, we also offer resources on that side as well. And then just kind of the details of what buildings we're eligible to work with. We are able to work with any privately owned building over 5,000 square feet. So if you own smaller buildings that are not Local Law 97, subject to Local Law 97, we can work with you as well if you're interested in making upgrades. Any building smaller than that, we refer to our partner organization, so you're not left in the dust. But all you have to do to get connected is give us a call, and you'll get connected with a account manager like myself, and we give you objective advice tailored to what exactly your needs and goals are for your building. And it's a completely free program, so there's no cost. You can talk to us as many or as few times as you'd like to. And this is kind of our regular process for a Local Law 97 covered building. So we clarify what exactly the requirements are and what the law is sort of expecting of your building specifically, identify what your emissions are based on Local Law 84 reports and compare it to the limits, determine which pathway is appropriate for your building. I'll get a little more into what this exactly means in a couple of slides, but then we help identify, how exactly you can achieve those goals, and like I said, hold your hand through the process until the projects are completed. Fun part. Okay, so Local Law 97 timeline. It was passed back in 2019, and now we are almost at the first compliance report deadline of May 1st, 2025. That's the big one there. Coming up very soon, as you can see, Article 321 and Article 320. That's affordable housing under a certain criteria, as well as market rate, multifamily, and commercial and industrial buildings. Excuse me. And each year, every 5 years, will be a new compliance period with a new threshold. So I'll explain that as well. So the overview, as I mentioned. So Article 320 applies to market rate buildings and commercial industrial, again, over 25,000 square feet, and they will be required to meet these carbon reduction targets. Ari, could you click one more time? Our little graphic has there we go. So every 5 years, this given threshold based on the building use and the building size, it's catered to each building, will drop based on these goals to eventually hit net zero by 2050, as was just discussed. As things are currently, 89% of properties are expected to meet the first compliance period limits, which is great. The big drop comes in 2030, and only 63% of properties are expected to meet those. So planning ahead is really key, and getting ready for that 2030. It's truly not that far off. So planning ahead is great idea. Decarb plan, that kind of stuff, really good idea at this point. For Article 321, that refers to specific affordable housing buildings, again, over 25,000 square feet. That has sort of a different compliance option, which is a one-time report. So stay tuned to listen if you fall under the Article 320 pathway specifically. So again, with the GHG emissions compliance pathway, which is that Article 320 kind of traditional way, the gross floor area is very important. That is what determines your limits in a lot of cases. And starting in 2025, annually, May 1st every year, so kind of with your benchmarking, a local law 97 report will also be due, certified by a registered design professional, which is a professional engineer or registered architect in the state of New York. And then if you exceed any of those, sorry, could you go back for 1 second? Oh no. Okay, so if you exceed those limits at all, there's a $268 per ton CO2 over the limit, and you have to pay whatever that is each year until you are compliant. So once you're below the threshold, there are no penalties for that aspect. But if you're above, there is this pretty hefty fine there. And the exception applies to Article 321 buildings that I just mentioned. This is just another way of phrasing that. That includes buildings that have more than 35% rent regulated units. So if you fall into that category, disregard most of this. Next, please. So penalties for noncompliance, again, they differ between the affordable housing category and the market rate category. For Article 320, there is if you do not submit the report, there's like a 2-prong penalty to each of these. If you do not submit the report, there is a monthly fine of 50 cents per square foot. So even if you are above the threshold, definitely submit your report. That is a separate penalty altogether. If you are above the threshold, there is again that $268 per ton over, and that's fined annually. So that'll vary from year to year, but even if you are over the emissions limit, filing a report is still very important. Article 321, there's sort of a flat penalty fee, but again, the same 2-pronged of no report and not in compliance. So even if you are not in compliance, I consider the penalties of not submitting a report at all. That's a whole separate penalty. Yeah. Next, please. And then Local Law 88. This is not the same as Local Law 97, but it's related. It's a law related to lighting and submetering that is also due May 1st, 2025. And it applies to sort of the same collection of buildings over 25,000 square feet. So how this law works, essentially, if there are any non-residential tenant spaces over 5,000 square feet in any multifamily buildings or the entirety of C&I buildings, the lighting would need to be submetered for each tenant, and the lighting upgrades would need to be in place for all common areas and the C&I building. An attestation letter for this will need to be submitted to the Department of Buildings, again, May 1st, 2025, by either a registered design professional who would be doing your Local Law 97, or a licensed master electrician or a licensed special electrician. That is something else to keep in mind. For 88, it's phrased kind of interestingly, where if you've made lighting upgrades since July 1st, 2010, you are expected to, the lighting has to meet the code that was in place at the time it was installed. So, if you look at this chart, if you installed your lighting in 2012, it would need to meet the 2010 code. And if you have paperwork to prove that, you shouldn't have to make any upgrades if it met the code. But if you're making any upgrades today, it would need to meet the 2020 Energy Conservation Code. And then the good faith effort, which the prior presenter talked about a little bit, but essentially the way the good faith effort works is to kind of be able to show that you have a plan and you're doing your best and kind of delay those fines for current years. So the two kind of main things here, either there's an unexpected or unforeseeable event if the building had like a fire or a flood. That's one bank of this. The other bank is the good faith effort document. So this is important because it does require compliance with all the other local laws. So you will need to submit your emissions report, which is sort of like Local Law 84. That needs to be satisfied, as does benchmarking, which is also Local Law 84, but the emissions report will also need to be submitted separately. Your RD people work with that with you. And then Local Law 88 will also need to be satisfied, which is why I just talked about it. So completing all of those and one of these 6 things, there's details for all of these, but the most common of which is the decarb plan. Next slide, please. So the decarb plan essentially paints out your next, 25 years for reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So you have to have an energy audit, which is similar to what Local Law 87 requires if your building is subject to that. An inventory of all the major equipment, any alterations that would be needed for compliance. So you need to have the timeline of installations, the financing plan for such upgrades, and the expected emissions reductions for each of those. So this is a very big long-term plan. It would need to be submitted by May 1st of this year. You would need to be able to meet the 2024 limits by May 1st of 2027, and you would need to demonstrate that the work for 2030 compliance is underway by May 1st of 2028. So this kind of delays it now, but make sure that you kind of are hightailing doing this work in the next couple of years. And then affordable housing. So again, buildings over 25,000 square feet, affordable housing is interesting because some fall under Article 320, some fall under Article 321. A big piece here is what exactly makes your building affordable. It's whether it's the number of rent regulated units or tax credit, you fall under different pathways. And that's part of what we're here for, is to help you figure it out. And your RDP would also be confirming that as well. We can look at the next slide. So this kind of splits up what they are. So Article 321 is the one that has kind of a completely different situation going on that is due May 1st, 2025. So Article 321 is if 35% of the units are subject to rent regulation or more, HDFC co-ops, or one or more units that participate in a federal project-based housing program, or if the building participates in NYCHA Pact. So if you fall under those categories, you'd be expected to comply under Article 321, which again is a one-time report, either demonstrating that you're below the 2030 limits as of today, so that after that big dip, that you're under that today, or that you complete the 13 prescriptive energy measures, energy conservation measures based on your system. I believe that's the next slide, but I might be lying. There they are. So these would be the 13 PECMs if you fall into that category. The other 2 are pretty much the same as what I just explained, but with a bit of a delay. So if you don't fall under this, you're kind of in the same boat. You just have a couple more years to comply. But for Article 321, there are 13 PECMs based on your system. None of them are like terribly invasive or expensive, and there are incentives to help with this if you are interested in pursuing incentives. And then penalty mitigation for Article 321, again, is a little different. So there's still unexpected or unforeseen event. Nobody likes those. Then there's the eligible energy conservation project. This is specifically if you have received funding from some sort of government entity or agency, probably HPD. So if you own an affordable multifamily building and you have recently worked with HPD on financing, this is something to look into, but you would probably know, or HPD will be in contact with you if you fall under this category. And the final one is the mediated resolution. And essentially that's entering a contract with the city that either you will complete the prescriptive energy measures by December 31st, 2025. So it just gets you a little extra time, and you have to have kind of that full-fledged plan, not as much as a decarb plan, but you have to, have the contractor who's doing it, how you plan to pay for it, and that timeline for the next, at this point, 10 months. The other option there is what's called 2030 by 2030. So essentially, again, plan out until 2030, how you will achieve those 2030, being below the 2030 threshold by 2030. So you plan out the next 5.5 years for that. And then quickly, incentive offerings. I'm not going to read through all of them, but this is just kind of to make a point. The accelerator can connect you with all these incentive programs, or whichever ones that are relevant for you, and walk you through them and how to apply, and making sure that you have contractors that are eligible for said programs. So these are ones that are available for all building types. Next one, these multifamily buildings, a bunch. Commercial. Next slide. also quite a few. So we can walk you through all of these if they are relevant for your project, or if you're interested in learning more, you can contact the accelerator and we can talk about it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. We'll have the contact information as well on the last slide. And let's talk a little bit about steam system balancing now. So still about probably 80% or so of large residential buildings in New York City are heated with steam systems, and it represents the largest utility expense in New York State, and therefore also has the biggest opportunity for carbon emission savings. Cost-effective solutions by just balancing your system and having it run more efficiently can save the building up to 20% in annual operating expenses. So when we approach a building, and we're doing a lot of the local law 97 as well, but we do a lot of general maintenance on buildings with maintenance contracts and so on and so forth. So we encounter a lot of common issues that you probably have some with your steam systems, varying hot and cold apartments, tenants opening the windows in the winter because the units are being overheated. So that's literally energy going out the window. Clanging and hissing pipes, and that's because a lot of times the pipes, over the years, they're not pitched exactly right. That creates, hammer in the pipes, leaky radiators, high energy costs, and tenant complaints. And a lot of these solutions, or pretty much all the solutions, are, highlighted in those 13 measures that Christina was showing before, which is master venting, TRVs and orifice plates. We'll talk a little bit more about orifice plates in a moment, because that's been something we've been doing a lot of, which has great benefits for maintenance costs and energy costs for buildings. Steam trap repair. Those steam traps typically fail every 3 to 5 years and need to be repaired or replaced. Multi-sensor boiler controls. So now one of the 13 measures is not only having a boiler management system, boiler controls, but also having in-unit sensors that feed the boiler to let it know how to regulate the firing on and up. Pipe installation, boiler clean and tune, and steam system general infrastructure. Success is really only assured with a building when you take a comprehensive and holistic approach to steam system balancing. We mentioned steam traps. They're, again, failing about every 3 to 5 years. TRVs are required in the 13 measures for two-pipe steam system buildings. However, unless there are heating complaints in a one-pipe system building, they are not required. The energy savings are just higher in a two-pipe steam system building generally. Pipe insulation, of course. Orifice plates are engineered discs installed in the radiator inlet. And initially, when steam systems were really engineered, they were really engineered for overheating. So, it goes back to the Spanish flu about 100 years ago. And at that time, it was actually recommended to overheat the room and then open the window. Of course, that's changed, but what hasn't changed is the power of or the capacity of the steam. So what happens is that apartments are frequently overheated, and orifice plates, they regulate the amount of steam entering the radiator so that it prevents overheating, and the correct amount of heat is entering the radiator or the apartment. What this also does is it eliminates the need for that costly steam trap repair. So every 3 to 5 years, every unit needs to be accessed, common areas as well, to replace or repair those steam traps. By installing orifice plates, the steam is not hitting up against that steam trap, and it eliminates a huge maintenance cost. Master venting is on the steam lines in the boiler room, and allows steam to move through the system efficiently and easily. BES also offers a local law turnkey solution, and we will start out by doing a site survey of the building. We'll present the building with a full report of the 13 measures. On the left side of your screen, what you see is a typical report where we will show the building where they are in compliance and where they are not. And where they are not, we will, of course, also propose to do the work. They can take that report, however, and have a super do it or take it to another service provider. After the work has been completed, we will, or I should say before the work is completed, we will help them navigate and apply for any incentive applications or programs that they are eligible for. That would include the engineering, the calculations, pre-inspection, and help the building carry the cost of the incentives. We'll then go ahead and do the installation work, and then, of course, the regulatory filing. We help buildings with local law 97, or both 320 and 321, local law 88, 84, and increasingly now, local law 152, which we'll talk about a bit more in a moment. About a year and a half ago, BES launched a dedicated plumbing division, and this division of ours does both plumbing repairs and new construction, piping replacement, sprinkler repair and replacement, sewer line repair and replacement, and we also do maintenance contracts for buildings that need regular maintenance, and will work with tenants in the building directly and take care of any heating issues. And one thing that our plumbing department now has been very busy with is local law 152. This requires all buildings in New York City with natural gas connection to have their gas lines inspected every 4 years. There is a $10,000 fine for this as well for non-compliance. We have a master plumber on our team that runs our plumbing division. We can help correct violations, inspections, and handling all the paperwork. A little bit unrelated, but this is something that I worked on with Christina recently, and I thought I should bring it to your attention. We've been working with a number of buildings that were showing correctly on the 2024 Article 321 list, and implementing the measures. However, about a month ago, the DOB published a new list of Article 321 buildings, and some of those buildings that were showing correctly as 321 and 2024 are now on the 320 list, which means that they wouldn't be eligible for the affordable pathway. And we've reached out to the DOB. This was their response to us, actually, that they're going to investigate our inquiry. But what you should make sure is you have your 2024 DHCR annual registration summary handy if you are an affordable building, and your rent roll report, so that when we do help you file for Article 321, we will be able to submit the that you are correctly identifying as an Article 321 building. We'll talk about a couple of case studies briefly before we move on to the Q&A. So here's a Queens oil-fueled affordable building that we helped, 53 units, a one-pipe steam pre-war building. They implemented the 13 prescriptive energy conservation measures. With oil-fueled buildings, there aren't as many energy rebates and incentives available, so we help try to reduce out-of-pocket costs as much as possible. And there was a 15% energy reduction for this particular building, over 3,000 gallons of oil saved. And we're just also wrapping up now NYCHA Patterson, New York City Housing Authority, Patterson Houses. This is a 15-building project, almost 1,800 units. These units are two-pipe steam system. And in this particular unit project, they installed an orifice plates project that we discussed earlier, eliminating the need for future steam trap repair and replacement. We also did all the steam traps in the common areas. The top floor of a building in an orifice plate will still keep its steam traps, so we repaired and replaced those as well. This project is estimated to have an 18% energy reduction. These are screenshots from the Patterson job. I wanted to just kind of display this, that BES is a paperless reporting company. we provide real-time reports to management. On the left-hand side, you have the in-unit work, and we're constantly monitoring percentage of the work done, work completed. We have a very high success rate working with management and tenants to get access to units. 97%, I think currently at NYC Patterson. And then on the common area side, on the right-hand side, management is always aware of where we're holding as far as installation for their common area traps or orifice plates, or the measures that we are working on together with the building. So I want to now open it up for a Q&A session. Before I do, I just want to also mention that we will be at the Co-op Expo show next week, March 4th. We'll be at booth 1006 on the second floor. If anybody would like to also pop in and say hello, we'd be really delighted to see you. I'm going to put up the contact information for the presenters. Please feel free to take a screen capture or write it down. We will also be sending out a copy of the slide deck in case there are some details you want to review. I'm going to turn it over to Eli right now and ask him to please read out any questions we had in the Q&A. And we'll then open up if anyone wants to get on the mic and they have an opportunity to ask as well. Please go ahead, Eli.
Hi, so we had a couple of questions. First off, thank you very much, everyone, for the wonderful presentation and informative presentation. We had a couple of questions that were asked by Syed, but thank you, Natan, for taking the initiative to answer some of those questions. So I'll start off with another question from Syed. Please confirm that 2030 performance-based pathway for Article 321 is also just one-time compliance, or is this going to be a yearly basis? Again, asking specifically for Article 321.
Yeah, so I think that one's for me. So yeah, that will also be, as the law stands now, a one-time report. I do have to kind of give the disclaimer that if anything changes, that may change, but as the law stands today, performance-based pathway is also a one-time report based on your 2024 emissions being below the 2030 limit.
Thank you, Christina. And another follow-up for Christina. Most of the lighting upgrade occurred via incentive-based program and in drawings were never filed or permits were never pulled, especially if it's lamp in and out replacement and not fixture replacement. Would DOB is expecting proof of EN drawings come back for lighting compliance under LL88, or is this simple attestation by RDP?
Yeah, so local 88 questions are really fun because we still do not have the filing instructions from the Department of Buildings. That has yet to be released, so I don't know exactly what they'll be expecting. But for the most part, typically the process is that the RDP or electrician will come in and do sort of a mini lighting audit and look at what's there. And if you have paperwork to prove when it was installed or receipts or something like that, from what I've heard, that's sufficient. But at the end of the day, it does mostly come down to what the RDP is comfortable attesting to. And maybe Ari could speak to that a little bit more about how BES approaches it.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we're doing right now local law 88 surveys, making sure that your lighting density complies. You have the proper lighting controls in all your units. We of course provide reporting for that as well, pass-fail compliance on local law 88. But as Christina said, we are also still waiting for guidance on the filing. So we're kind of held in suspense on that.
Thank you, Christina and Ari. How precisely does the carbon bridge impact LL97 compliance? I assume it does this in part by reducing the amount of gas drawn from the utility. But since this is still a gas boiler, how is this measured exactly? And what about further down the line as the emission requirements drop progressively further down to zero? Are the emissions considered to be zero with this device installed?
Hi, yeah, so should I, happy to answer that directly. So we achieve the total decarbonization of the property, and that's how we enable local 97 compliance. So you're no longer pulling gas from the utility. We produce 100% of the gas that the boiler needs on site in the building using the CO2 from the boiler and electricity. So your gas bill goes essentially to zero, your electric bill increases, and you've now achieved having an all-electric building in terms of your energy meters, even though you still have your existing boiler and radiators and everything else. So, happy to answer any follow-up questions. I hope that was clear. Our boilers still use oil. Let me see that. Our boilers still use oil. Will carbon bridge work for us? Yes. So for oil buildings, actually, we work very well. The building can be on oil or natural gas. Either way, we offer a solution. In fact, most of the projects that we're currently executing with these good faith effort extension filings are oil-fired buildings because they just happen to be the properties that are facing fines in 2025 more than the natural gas-fired buildings.
Thank you, Natan. Next, we have from John, for precise control of steam to apartments, consider the value of exquisite heat for buildings under 25,000 square feet. I guess that was just more of a comment. Yeah, it was more of a comment. And that is all. Actually, I have a couple of
Ellie, there's a few more here I see as well. If you don't mind, I can answer. Some folks ask where the carbon bridge goes. They're also asking about, where we've installed. Just so the carbon bridge would go 100% either in the basement, the rear yard, or the roof, space allowing. So some of these buildings are very tight on space, and we will have to be creative. So the portions that are actually producing natural gas have to go in a combustion rated place similar to the boiler. So either the boiler room itself or outside. But the CO2 processing portion is non-hazardous, and that can be literally anywhere on the property. But all work is contained within the sort of mechanical spaces. Nothing is in the common area or tenant disrupting spaces. And then as far as the question about projects in New York City, we are implementing a project as we speak at City College on 137th Street. That'll be our first project in New York City. And that should be going online within the next few months. The truth is we were focused very much on utility scale projects until very recently, when we saw that Local Law 97 was going to sort of stay in its current form. And so we've offered the solution.
Thank you. Eli, any others?
Yes, thank you, Natan. Question just came in from Jordan. Is there any special staff training required in maintaining and operating the carbon bridging tech?
It's similar to a commercial boiler, so it's certainly not maintenance free. But any boiler mechanic can be trained to operate the carbon bridge as well. So presumably, the boiler contractor working in that property already would be trained to handle the maintenance of the carbon bridge. I mean, we have remote monitoring and control systems similar to what people have with boilers these days in parallel.
Okay. I know something that Daisy just asked, how do we get more information? Ari, you'll provide a slide deck to everyone present with all the information. Then I had a couple of questions that came in prior. For standard carbon, are there rebate programs through Con Edison available for installing this technology?
No, not right now. It's definitely something we hope to build out in the future as things progress. Right now, the primary sort of government incentives are the federal tax credits the 45Q carbon capture tax credit, the 45V green hydrogen tax credit. But as far as local incentives, there's absolutely a lot of possibilities.
Thank you, Natan. And do you have an idea of how much more electricity will be used? Is it about the same as a standard gas bill, or will this implement a higher output?
I'm very happy you asked that question. Yeah, it's an excellent question. Very happy you asked that question. What will be the increase in the electricity bill relative to the current gas bill? So, the increased electricity bill will be comparable to the current gas bill. You won't have your net energy bills will be similar to what they are today. And the reason for that is that we only operate the electricity, 90% of the electricity consumption for the Carbon Bridge or more, we operate only during off-peak times from 10 p.m. at night until 8 a.m. in the morning with a high voltage electricity meter, which ensures you have no demand charges. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges for electrification, is that if you use electricity in the wrong rate class at the wrong time, so to speak, you can pay demand charges that make your energy bills just absolutely skyrocket. So we solve for that challenge by only operating the system off peak and with the rate class that enables you to avoid the demand charges completely.
Thank you, Natan. For Christina, I have an Article 321 building. We are filing LO97, but we have not completed LO88. Can we file for 97 even though we have not completed LO88 yet?
So for that, it would depend on how you're planning to comply with Article 321. If you've been doing the prescriptive energy conservation measures, the work for 88 is one of the PECMs. They have the same requirements. So you wouldn't be done with the prescriptive measures until you've also completed 88. Kind of those overlap there. But if you're doing the energy performance pathway, they are separate reports. So theoretically you could submit one without submitting the other. But there's still a penalty associated with not submitting the local 88 report as well. That's a $1,500 report or penalty for not submitting that report. If you have a question about like the specific building, or if you're interested in any of these penalty mitigation options, please reach out to the accelerator. We can talk about what the situation is for your building specifically.
Thank you, Christina. Ari, are there incentives currently available for master vents, install steam traps, or TRVs?
Yes, there are incentives available. There is some lead time, the process of submitting the paperwork and then getting the approval. So I would suggest that if you would like to get this done, and really reduce your out-of-pocket costs, you reach out as soon as possible and we structure a plan. Perhaps we will help you file for an extension if the rebates are considerable so that you can still comply in time and be able to capture those incentives. But there are incentives, of course, for master venting, steam traps and pipe installation for gas-fueled buildings.
Okay, and then again, a follow-up for Ari. How do orifice plates reduce heating costs? Are tenants comfortable with the results?
So that's a good question, actually. The way it reduces heating costs specifically is because you're no longer overheating the rooms, the radiators, right? The correct amount of heat to heat the room at a comfortable level is now entering the radiator. And then, of course, the secondary reduction in operating costs we discussed earlier was the eliminating the need to constantly repair and replace those steam traps. As far as tenant comfort goes, yeah, I mean, sometimes when you do an orifice plate job, there are underlying issues that a building has, and that goes back to the steam system balancing. We diagnosed the building. We're experts in this particular field. We've been doing orifice plates for many years. We worked together with Steve Winter. We've introduced innovation into this particular methodology But the end result is tenants are comfortable and tenant complaints are reduced.
Thank you very much. And then lastly, for Natan, which utility companies are you currently working with for the standard carbon technology? And are there any articles written about the technology?
So we're working with Con Edison and National Grid in New York City. I mean, on a larger basis, we're working with National Fuels in upstate New York, as well as Israel Electric Corporation, utilities all over the U.S. and around the world. But in New York City, we've engaged with Con Edison about the integration of our natural gas into their network, as well as with National Grid. Sorry, was there another question on top of that? You said, articles that have been published. Yeah, on our website, we have a connection. We can share our press and media package and everything else.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Natan. And that wraps up the Q&A segment. Ari, take it away.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Eli. Yeah, we're just perfect timing. We're about a minute now on to the hour. Really, thank you very much to Standard Carbon, the entire team. You guys really have fascinating technology that I think will be a game changer as we get to, 2030, and we're starting to have to navigate, the lower carbon caps. Thank you very much, Christina, as always. Christina's phenomenal resource at New York City Accelerator. If you're not taking advantage, it's a shame. It really helped you navigate everything that has to do with your local law. Again, we are going to send out a copy of the slide deck and a recording to everyone that registered for the event. And a reminder, next week again at the Cooperator Expo at the New York Midtown Hilton. We'll be there, booth 1006. Please stop by and say hello. Thank you again, everyone, for taking time out of your busy day. We look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.